Okay, 611. Sri Sukavacha Evam Samsato Dharmam Vachaha Patyurachetashaha Naeva Kranatta Sambrantaha Palyana Paranipa Palayana Paranipa. Sri Sukdev Goswami said, O King Prithasur, the commander-in-chief of the demons, advised his lieutenants in the principles of religion. But the cowardly demoniac commanders, intent upon fleeing the battlefield, were so disturbed by fear that they could not accept his words. So that's where the previous chapter had ended, that the cowardly demoniac commanders, intent upon fleeing the battlefield. Prem Kishore Prabhu, you may want to.
We are good. Yeah.
Okay. So, when the Devas were emboldened by the Vajra, the benediction of the Lord Vishnu, they came with renewed energy, and bewildered by that enthusiasm, the Asuras, right at the beginning of the battle, they turned their back and started running away. And while they were running away, the Devas were attacking them from behind and killing them. So Vritrasur, he had first chastised the Asuras. He had called upon the big leaders of the demons like Kalnemi. Who else had he called? Puloma. So these were like leaders, and they were all running away. And we had seen that he had given instructions almost identical to what Krishna speaks to Arjun, right? He told them that while death is inevitable, so just by running away from the battlefield, it's not that you're going to cheat death. Eventually, death will get you. So better than leading an inglorious life, you should stay on the battlefield and die a glorious death, which means that you will receive an exalted destination. Right? So this is what Krishna in the third chapter here, he had given these instructions to second chapter also. He had given these instructions to Arjun. He had said that, O Partha, happy are the Kshatriyas to whom these opportunities come by unsought, for they lead to the doors of the heavenly planets. He said, do not degrade to this, do not yield to this degrading importance. So very similar instructions he gives. However, the Asuras were so disturbed by fear that they do not pay any heed to his words, to the words of Vritrasur. So generally speaking, it is difficult to preach to people when they are under extreme duress. And for example, Kamsa was so much agitated about the possibility of Krishna killing him that it's not possible to preach to him. Then later on we will see how Maharaj Chitraketu, he was so much disturbed by not getting a son that when Parvat Muni came, he did not even bother to instruct him. Right? He just said, Shok Ashok, you will get a son that will be a cause of happiness and distress. Similarly, we see that Diti, she was so much bewildered by lust that even though Kashyap Muni was trying to instruct her, did not make any difference. Dhruva was so much consumed by anger that Narad Muni, he tries half-heartedly to say that take the high road, and Dhruva said no way. Right? So the art of preaching is to not present philosophy, but to present philosophy that is conducive to Kaldesh, and Patra. That's why we see at different points the acharyas, sometimes the instructions are almost materialistic, and sometimes they're very, very transcendental. It depends on Kaldesh and Patra. In this context, Srila Prabhupada in Isa Upanishad makes this point that the Earth planet is a good place to preach, because he says that there is some suffering and there is some enjoyment. So because there is some enjoyment, it gives the people a taste for enjoyment and a hankering for more. But because if they were in a place where there was no enjoyment, then they would not even hanker for it. Right? For instance, there is some taste that we're not even aware of. Then we will not even hanker for it because we don't even know it exists. But if we have a little bit of the taste and we like it, then we would say, give me more. Right? So there is some enjoyment that creates a hankering, and there is some suffering also, which gives an impetus to want to leave the material. Because if there was no suffering, then people would say, but I'm comfortable over here. What is the need for me to look for any other place? So there is some enjoyment, some suffering. But if there was so much suffering, then the person would be completely bewildered by the suffering. Then there would be no way that the person would look for anything else, because that would be the universe of existence. If the person would essentially say more suffering, lesser suffering, that would be the universe that the person would exist. So in the heavenly planets, there is too much enjoyment, right? So they are satisfied by the enjoyment. In the hellish planets, there is too much suffering, and that's what they know. But in the earthly planet, there is a good mix, which gives the person the push and the pull. Right? So that's why Prabhupada makes this point. This is a good place to take birth in to make spiritual advancement. Okay, verses 2 and 3. Visriyamanam pratanama asurim avsaroshabha kalanu kule stri dasehe kalyamanam manatvat drishtvaptya shankuruda indrashatruramashita tananiva raya sujarajan nirbharteshe nirbhatsedam uvacha. O King Parikshit, the demigods, taking advantage of a favorable opportunity presented by time, attacked the army of the demons from the rear and began driving away the demoniac soldiers, scattering them here and there as if the army had no leader. Seeing the pitiable condition of his soldiers, Vritasur, the best of the Asuras, who was called Indrashatru, the enemy of Indra, was very much aggrieved. Unable to tolerate such reverses, he stopped and forcibly rebuked the demigods, speaking the following words in an angry mood. So in this verse, Sukadev Goswami calls the demons as Anathvat. Anath. So Anath means without any shelter. Now, actually, Vritrasur was the leader. So how can Sukadev Goswami say they are Anathvat? So the reason he's calling them Anathvat was that even though, so Sukadev Goswami at the same time is glorifying Vritrasur also, right? And we see this mood throughout this chapter and the next chapter, that Sukadev Goswami, he cannot help but appreciate Vritrasur as one devotee to another. And he cannot help but criticize Indra, seeing his materialistic propensity. But because they are all playing a different role from what their constitutional position is. Sukadev Goswami does not come out openly and criticize Indra or glorify Vritrasur, but we see that by play of words, like he calls Vritrasur the best of the Asuras, and then at other points indirectly criticize Indra. So Vritrasura is a very qualified leader, but still the asuras called Anathvat is because they refuse to take shelter of him. So what does it mean they refuse to take shelter of him? It means that they did not follow his instructions. So the practical aspect of taking shelter is following instructions. So Vritrasura advised them, don't run. Stand in the battlefield and either kill or be killed. But they completely neglected his instructions, which is why Sukadeva Goswami calls them Anathvat. We also see here that Vritrasura is chastising both the Devas as well as the Asuras. And this is because of his nature of speaking on the principles of dharma. And he's chastising those who do not follow the principles of dharma. So just like Vishwarup, he was strictly following the principles of dharma with impartiality. He wasn't making a distinction between the devas and the asuras. So Vritrasura also has the same mood. So even though he's standing there as the general of the asuras, but he's observing them and evaluating them based on how well do they follow the principles of the dharma. So when he saw them turning away and run away, it is against Kshatriya dharma to leave a battlefield in battle out of fear. Now it is also against the Kshatriya dharma to attack a retreating soldier. So for the former he criticizes the asuras, and now for the latter we will see he will criticize the devas. So what were the devas doing? That they were taking of the favorable opportunity presented by time. And in doing so, they were following adharma. Because one should not attack an enemy from behind. So the point is that even if time offers an opportunity, it should be evaluated in the context of dharma. Because of time, one comes across money. So someone might say that this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. Maybe it is, but that does not mean that it should not be evaluated in the context of dharma. In the fourth canto of the Bhagavatam, we see that Prithu Maharaj, when he saw the movement of time, how did he see the movement of time? That he was getting old. Or when Yudhishthira Maharaj saw the symptoms of time. What were the symptoms of time? The onset of the age of Kali. So based on this, they took the dharmic decision, which is time for us to retire. Right. So these are examples of observing the flow of time and acting properly. The devas were observing the flow of time but acting opportunistically out of it, which is why Vritrasura is considering them to be adharmic. In the Mahabharata, the Kauravas, when they saw the passage of time, that the Pandavas were in the 13th year of the exile, then they began to hunt the Pandavas. Right. Similarly, when Ashwathama, he saw the events of time, that the Pandavas had annihilated the Kauravas, then he goes and he massacres the Pandavas in the camps. Or the Devas over here, seeing that with the flow of time, the asuras had become weak. They began to attack them from the rear. So all these are examples of improper action in the observation of time. So in the first canto of the Bhagavatam, when Narad Muni is instructing Vyasadev to write Srimad Bhagavatam, so he writes that he says that as far as happiness derived from sense enjoyment is concerned, it can be obtained automatically in the course of time. Just as in the course of time we obtain miseries, even though we do not desire them. Right? So both the happiness and miseries are byproducts of the course of time. The duty of the person is to find out how to act dharmically in both situations. So one who truly observes the passage of time will realize that the three planetary systems, they come and go. One's attainment of them come and go. Right? So what would be the true dharmic reaction to observing the passage of time? Is that let's not worry about this three planetary system. Let us endeavor for something beyond that. Now, another thing also is that we can also compare Vritrasur with Bhishma Dev. So we see that the Kauravas did not have faith in Bhishma because they knew him to be favorable to the Pandavas, even though Bhishma was fighting for the Kauravas against the Pandavas. Now Bhishma knew this, that Duryodhana did not trust him, right? But he was completely undisturbed by this. And eventually what does Bhishma do? He reveals to the Pandavas the secret of killing him. So it's the mind and heart thing. So similarly, we see that Vritrasur, despite being a devotee, is fighting on the side of the asuras and is actually being rejected by the asuras. And later we will see that Vritrasur will, much like Bhishma did to the Pandavas, Vritrasur will also reveal to Indra the key to killing him by the use of the Vajra. So in both these cases, Krishna wanted to show to the entire world that even if the devotee is on the side of adharma, he will not be protected. So both Bhishma and Vritrasur were exalted devotees, but they were on the side of adharma. And both of them were vanquished. Now, at a deeper level, both Bhishma and Vritrasur were not disturbed by the fact that the Lord was using them as an instrument to make this point, right? And they did the right thing, right? And ultimately, they are the ones who actually were really protected. Bhishma, first canto, 7th chapter, we see he actually goes back to Godhead. Same thing with Vritrasur, we see later on, right? Okay, let's move to the next verse, which is verse 4. Kim va ucharitermato धावद्भिः प्रस्थतो हतिः नहि भीतवदः श्लाघ्य na swargyah suramanina. O demigods, these demoniac soldiers have taken birth uselessly. Indeed, they have come from the bodies of their mothers exactly like stool. What is the benefit of killing such enemies from behind while they are running in fear? One who considers himself a hero should not kill an enemy who is afraid of losing his life. Such killing is never glorious, nor can it promote one to the heavenly planets. So, even though the Asuras did not follow the instructions of Vritrasur, we see that he's still trying to protect them. And he's protecting them while staying true to the path of Dharma. So the point that is making here is according to the principles of Dharma. So in the Mahabharata, I believe it is said that one should not kill an enemy who is much weaker than you, who is without weapons, who is intoxicated, who has surrendered, who is running away from the battlefield. So there are different conditions in which it says that one should not kill an enemy. So that's the principle of Dharma. So to the Devas, Vritrasura is saying that just because the Asuras are acting adharmically, it does not mean that you should also act in the same way. He's not making any excuses for the Asuras, right? He's saying that they have come from the bodies of the mothers exactly like stool, right? Which means they have no value. And uh, uh, in themselves, they don't represent any good qualities. However, at the same time, if the devas are to be just 1 minute. I'm sorry, I'm back. So at the same time, if the devas are to consider themselves to be better than the asuras, they should act according to the principles of dharma. Now we see that Vritrasura also does the same thing. That right now he's talking about the general principles of dharma. Later on, he will speak about the transcendental principles of dharma. Like we see Krishna taking Arjun first through Karma Yoga, Gyan Yoga, and later on he talks about Bhakti Yoga. Vritrasura will do the same thing. So Prabhupada says that Vritrasura insulted the demoniac soldiers by comparing them to the stool of their mothers. Both stool and a cowardly son come from the abdomen of the mother, and Vritrasura said there is no difference between them. A similar comparison was also given by Tulsidas, who commented that the sun and urine both come from the same channel. In other words, semen and urine both come from the genital, but semen produces a child, whereas urine produces nothing. Therefore, if the child is neither a hero nor a devotee, he is not a son but urine. Chanakya Pandit says, what is the use of a son who is neither glorious nor devoted to the Lord? Such a son is like a blind eye who simply gives plain but cannot help to one to see. So Vishwanath Chakravarti says that Ucharitaha, like stool, is applied both to the Devas and the Asuras. So Vritrasura is condemning both of them. The Asuras for leaving the battlefield in fear, and the Devas for killing them from behind, like cowards. Okay. Verse 5. Yadi va pradhan hai shraddha saram va kshulak hridi agre tishat matram me nachet gram sukhe spara. O insignificant demigods, if you truly have faith in a heroism, if you have patience in the course of your heart, and if you're not ambitious for sense gratification, please stand before me for a moment. Now, here Vritrasur is demonstrating another important quality of a leader. So one should not think that the quality of the leader is simply to keep criticizing the, the followers. This is right, this is wrong, this is the principle of dharma, you should apply it. But the leader should actually demonstrate the qualities. Right? So here Vritrasura is saying, fight me. I am not running away from the battlefield. I am over here willing to either fight you or be killed. Right? So this is what Vritrasura was asking the Asuras. So even though they did not listen to him, he does not give up that quality in himself. Right? So he's demonstrating, it's called leading from the front, that he is actually at the forefront of the instructions that he is giving to his followers. So the devas may ask that, Vritrasur, you are asking us to attack you, but what is stopping you from attacking us? Right? And uh, the understanding is that so far the devas have not engaged with Vritrasur, which is why he is still holding his position. So he gives three qualities which the Kshatriya should have. So pradhane shraddha, faith. Pradhane, faith in one's heroism. Then saram, patience. Patience in the core of the heart. And nached grami sukhe. So grami sukhe is sense gratification, not desiring sense gratification. So what is Vritrasura saying to the Deva? That if you have these qualities, which means that if you are real Kshatriyas, then I am standing here, you stand and attack me and engage in battle with me. Do not attack the fleeing Asuras. Right? So he says, Agre tishahat matram me. So just for a moment, come and stand in front of me. So in a way, Vritrasura is insulting the Devas also, that it looks like your style of attack is from behind. But give that cowardly attitude up and come in front of me. And just for a moment, which means just engage the battle with me and then I will respond. The reason I haven't responded to you is because you haven't engaged with me. So come in front of me and pick up a pebble and throw at me, and then we will begin battle. And Prabhupada writes in the purport that rebuking the demigods, Vritrasura challenged, O demigods, if you're actually heroes, stand before me now and try to show your prowess. If you do not wish to fight, if you're afraid of losing your life, I shall not kill you. For unlike you, I am not so evil-minded as to kill persons who are neither heroic nor willing to fight. If you have faith in a heroism, please stand before me. Now, the Devas are fighting the Asuras for the welfare of the universe. The order of the universe is that Indra should rule Swarga. The Asuras are not qualified to rule it. So that is dharma. That is the principle, that is the welfare of the universe. So they're following the principles of dharma in fighting with Vritrasura and the asuras. Therefore, one can say that they're performing a selfless act. They're just doing their duty. However, the fact that they're attacking the fleeing demons from behind reveals that they're doing this with a selfish consciousness. If they were truly selfless, they would examine the principles of dharma and then act upon it. But the fact that they are breaking the principles of dharma means that while they are pretending to do a selfless act, it is in a selfish consciousness. Now, Vritrasura, on the other hand, is fighting against dharma. He's fighting against the devas. We established the devas are protecting dharma. So Vritrasura is fighting against dharma. So his acts can be considered to be selfish. Right? However, he is performing this selfish act with a selfless consciousness. Right? So he's properly following the codes of engagement by chastising the asuras and the devas on the principles of dharma, by offering himself as a target. Right? So the position of Vritrasura is considered to be superior to that of the devas, which means that superior to the act is the consciousness with which the act is performed. The act of the devas is dharmic, but their consciousness is adharmic. The act of Vritrasura is adharmic, but his consciousness is dharmic. And Vritrasura is consistently glorified at a higher pedestal. Right? So it reveals that the consciousness is, ideally they should both be aligned, but if they are not, the consciousness has more importance. For example, one may go distributing, distributing books, which is a selfless act, right? You want to help people, but one is distributing it with a selfish consciousness that I'll be the biggest book distributor. What is my score going to be? People will say, you're such a book distributor, right? So, not the ideal circumstances. Early on, devotees would go to gas stations and they would say that they would make some transaction in which they were supposed to give change, and then they would tell the station owner that we actually do not have any change, but we have these books which are worth some money. Please take it. Right? Or once Tripurari Maharaj, he was approached by a person. He was distributing books. He was approached by a person saying that I'm looking for something that talks about the power situation in the state of California or something like that. And Tripurari Maharaj said, this is the book that talks about that. Right? And Prabhupada initially appreciated these. He would say that by hook or crook, we should distribute these books. But then it was also considered to be what Prabhupada considers a battlefield emergency. It was not the sthai bhav. It was not the ongoing behavior that Prabhupada would say devotees are gentlemen, devotees are known by their transparency, honesty, integrity, etc. So we see that the Raji Muni was not personally instructed by the Lord, but he readily gave up his body because he was detached from the bodies. Now the Devas, when they prayed to the Lord gave them transcendental instructions. But they did not listen to the instructions because they were attached to the material aspect. So that is the mentality of the Devas. They got the spiritual power from the Raji Muni, but they were using it in a wrong way. They got the instructions from Lord Vishnu to make spiritual advancements, but they were neglecting it. They were using spiritual power for material advancement. So this is like the seventh offense against the chanting of the holy name, which is to perform sinful activities on the strength of the holy name. So using spiritual power like chanting for material purpose, which is protection from sinful reactions. So in Shuddha Bhakti Chintamani, Shivram Swami says that the example of seventh offense is when devotees, they turn teaching into a fruitive activities by turning a temple into a commercial enterprise. And so Srila Prabhupada would often complain about priests in India who would use deity worship as a means for maintaining their family or collect dowry for the daughter. Or Bhakti Vinod Thakur would, or I think it was Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, would criticize priests for using shaligram to break condiments, right, for material purpose. Similarly, there are devotees that use preaching to increase opulences, if not their own, even for the temple. Right? So the real purpose of the temple is to help the others make spiritual advancement. It is not so much to become materially opulent. It could be a byproduct. Right. So the Goswamis built very, very opulent temples, but that was a byproduct. The main focus was to establish Krishna Bhakti and Vraja. So the Devas, they got the power from Lord Vishnu's instructions. They got the power from Dadichi. And it was to maintain the principles of Dharma. But now they are using this against Dharma. Much like an empowered devotee, he uses puja, labh, and pratishtha to weaken his bhakti. That's also, this is like the 10th offense, which is to maintain material attachments despite so many instructions to the contrary. Right? The Devas were receiving instructions from the Dishis by word and actions, instructions from Lord Vishnu, but they were still maintaining strong material attachment, so strong that they were willing to break the rules of Dharma and engage in an adharmic battle. Let's go to the 6th verse. Evam sura ganan krudho bhishayan vapusha ripun vyandat sumaha prano yena loka vichetashaha. Sukdev Goswami said, Vritrasur, the angry and most powerful hero, terrified the demigods with his stout and strongly built body. When he roared with a resounding voice, nearly all living entities fainted. Right. So, Sumaha Prana. Right. So we see Sukdev Goswami almost he can't help it but keeps glorifying Vritrasur. Right. He says Sumaha Prana. Right. Maha means great. Sumaha means he is greatest of the great. Prana. Right. A person. And his prowess was such that when he roared, then all the living entities, the Devas and the Asuras, fainted. So in the next 7 verses is the battle between Vritrasura and the Devas. Okay, verse 7. Tandeva gana sarve vrita vishpotarena vai nipitir mochata bhuma yatheva sanena hataha. When all the demigods heard Vritrasura's tumultuous roar, which resembled that of a lion, they fainted and fell to the ground as if struck by thunderbolts. So these and previous verses, they demonstrate the enormous power of Vritrasura. So Vishwanath Chakravarti says that Vritrasur, he struck his thighs with his hands. And just that sound caused the Devas to faint. So previously the Asuras, they had used so many weapons against the Devas. And then they had thrown mountain peaks and rocks and trees. And the Devas simply smiled. And by their own weapons, they had counteracted all of them. However, now, just the sound of Vritrasur striking his thighs with his hand, it caused the Devas to faint with fear. That was the power of Vritrasur. It also demonstrates the importance of quality over quantity. So Srila Prabhupada would say that one moon is better than 1,000 stars. So that was his way of saying that better to have one properly situated disciples than have thousands of disciples who are disciples in names only. So like we see these days, there are so many facilities for preaching. And there is like this Zoom where people can participate from the comfort of their house. There is printed media, there is social media, PowerPoints, YouTube recordings. None of this was available when Srila Prabhupada was there. And yet, he made so many devotees. And not just he made devotees, like he made moons. He really empowered these devotees just by the power of his purity. So that is quality over quantity. In Chaitanya Charitamrita, when Pradyumna Mishra comes to meet Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he says to Mahaprabhu that I want to hear about Krishna. So Mahaprabhu is touched, and right away he congratulates Pradyumna Mishra, saying that you are so fortunate because you have the desire to hear about Krishna. And then he directs him to Ramananda Rai. Similarly, once a Grahastha Vaishnava, he approached Bhaktivinoda Thakur and said that I would like to speak Krishna Katha with you. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur was so genuinely grateful and appreciative of the desires of the person. So this is the force of purity, that it touches the heart of the Lord and the devotees of the Lord. So there was a devotee known as Vaibhava, and his service was that he would personally hand copy books for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And those days there were no printing presses. So the only way to make copies of the books was somebody would sit, read the original and write. And Mahaprabhu called him Vijay Bapu because he was using his hand for such a glorious purpose, right? And he undertook this tedious service because of his eagerness to read the books. Now, we don't even have to buy books. They're available in the mobile, on the internet. The quantity is there, but the quality of the desire is lacking. Right? So earlier, the quality was so intense that they had no problem in dealing with the scarce quantity. I mean, really speaking, if you look at it, almost all the Vaishnava literature is available to us. When Bhaktivinoda Thakur wanted to get a copy of Chaitanya Charitamrita, I forget, it took him like several years. I don't know if it was 7 years or whatever, to locate a copy of Chaitanya Charitamrita. And then after that, he engaged somebody to make 3 copies of it. Now, how long does it take for you to get Chaitanya Charitamrita? As long as it takes to type in the URL. In the Leela Amrita, there is a pastime that when Srila Prabhupada he had a Pandal program in Calcutta. And while he was holding the Pandal program, the Naxalites entered. And they started creating much disturbance because they didn't like devotees. They're communists, atheists, right? So many devotees became scared, they were confused. And Srila Prabhupada stopped his lecture. He took up a pair of kartals and then he started singing the Govindam Adi Purusham prayers. And just the purity of Prabhupada reciting the prayers, the Naxals who were very, very agitated, they had weapons on them. They just became calm and they eventually left. So sometimes people say that collective unity is better than individual purity. Right? Better to have 100 people who are on a scale of 1 to 10, maybe 5, than to have one person who is at a 10. Right? Better to have a large mass of some form of devotees than a small mass of advanced devotees. So how do we make that distinction? What is better? So we can apply the definition of bhakti, right? And nectar devotion, she's anubhilashita shunyam, right? Jnana karmadya navritam. So in itself, it does not make a difference if there is a large mass of less advanced devotees and a small mass of advanced devotees. What makes the difference is that are the principles of bhakti being covered or nurtured. Even if there is a big mass of neophyte devotees, as long as they're sincerely striving to make advancements, they're as good as a small mass of pure devotees. Right? So the principle of bhakti needs to be applied. We see the difference between Vyasadeva and Narad Muni. So before Vyasadeva wrote the Bhagavatam, he had given the Vedas, which were also a path to bhakti. But it was a long and convoluted path to bhakti, going through karma, jnana, stang, and then to bhakti. Narad Muni's mode is to give bhakti directly. So even when he was preaching to Mrigarari, so it said that when he preached to Mrigarari, he said, "You kill these animals completely." But right after that, he started preaching the highest philosophy of Krishna consciousness. That's how Mrigarari became a pure devotee. So when Mahaprabhu was traveling in the south, at that time, he would reciprocate with those who were favorable to him. And so there were many who were contemptuous of him. That this person is singing and dancing, is mad or whatever it is. And Mahaprabhu would leave them alone. Right? So that is the essence of preaching. Give a path, but do not give a path that is so long that one forgets the goal and deviates from the path. Right? So even when in Bhakti Vrikshas, which are created to cultivate devotion amongst other people, there are some that will forever be on the path. Right? And general recommendation is that one should focus on those who at some point take to Krishna consciousness. And now, practically speaking, the devotees tend to be even more compassionate than the Lord, and they even continue to give shelter to those who are not taking to the process completely, as long as they're not disturbing others. But we see the difference between Narad Muni and Vyasadeva. Narad Muni chastised Vyasadeva because he gave a very long and convoluted path. And Vyasadeva accepted the chastisement and gave the Bhagavatam. Right. So the force should be one that leads one directly to the path of bhakti. So general discussion in the context of importance of quality over quantity. Okay, so we'll do one more verse, and after that we'll pause for discussion. Verse 8, and maybe two more verses. Verse 8. Mamardapatapyam swarasennamaturam nimile taksham rangaranga durmada Ramakampayan udyatta shula ojasa nalam vanam yutha patiryathonmada. As the demigods closed their eyes in fear, Vritrasur, taking up his trident and making the earth tremble with his great strength, trampled the demigods beneath his feet on the battlefield, the way a mad elephant tramples hollow bamboos in the forest. So we see that now Vritrasura has taken matters in his own hands. That the Devas, since in a way they have declared battle by attacking the fleeing Asuras, he is now attacking the Devas. Okay, verse 9. Vilokyatam vajra darotama tayam shritaha swakshatrave vidravate mahagadam Shikshepatama apatamem sudusaham jagraha vamena karena leelaya. Seeing Vritrasura's disposition, Indra, the king of heaven, became intolerant and threw at him one of his great clubs, which was extremely difficult to counteract. However, as the club flew towards him, Vritrasur effortlessly caught it with his left hand. So now the battle has become in earnest between Vritrasur and Indra. So Vritrasur was angry the Devas were attacking the Asuras, so he began to attack the Devas. Indra is angry that Vritrasur is attacking the Devas, so now he attacked Vritrasur. So now the battle is between Indra and Vritrasur. So Indra, he throws his club at Vritrasur. Right? So we note that he does not use the Vajra. He has more faith in the club because it has served him well in previous battles, rather than use the Vajra, which was created for this purpose on the instructions of the Lord. Right? So we see Indra's mentality over here that Indra shows more faith in his own ability. That's why Sukadeva Goswami says that he threw at him one of his great clubs, which are difficult to counteract. Which means in the past he has thrown this club and difficult to protect against that. So he has the Vajra, he has the club. But the club he knows in the past has given him success. Right? So he is neglecting the instructions of the Lord and relying on his own ability, much like a conditioned soul relies more on his senses than the instructions of the Vedas to take to Krishna consciousness. Because engaging in the senses, the jiva has tasted both success and defeat, but remembers the success. So the jiva knows that by my own endeavor, I have protected myself from different calamities in the past. Now the guru or the scriptures might say, take shelter of Krishna. But the jiva has no experience of taking shelter of Krishna. So even though that vajra of the instruction is in the hand of the jiva, they do not use it. Rather, they use that which they are comfortable with, which is their own which is their own sense gratification. In the second canto of the Bhagavatam, it is mentioned. So this is Sukadeva Goswami saying that by the constant chanting of the holy name after the ways of the great authorities, it is the doubtless and fearless way of success for all including those who are free from all material desires, those who are desirous of material enjoyment, and those who are self-satisfied by the dint of transcendental knowledge. Right? You said, Yogi Nam Nripa Nirnitam. That this has already been accepted by the advanced yogis. So when conditioned souls like us listen to this verse, we understand that Vajra is in our hand. That etan nirvidyamanam ichatam akuta bhayam. That simply by chanting the holy name with faith, we can get fear from akuta bhayam. We can get freedom from all kinds of fear. But we don't, because we have more experience with our own senses. Srila Prabhupada would say that all you need to do is hear the Ajamil pastime and be convinced about the powers of the holy name. What other proof is needed? But we hear it with faith, we accept it, but when it comes to the battlefield, we still go to the clubs that we have in our hand. Okay, so I'll pause over here and we'll start from verse 10 in our next discussion. Any comments, observation?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you very much, Prabhuji, for the beautiful class. I have two questions, Prabhuji. The first one, the devas attacking the demons from behind. So the act may look selfish, but I was thinking the demons attacked them with thinking that they can defeat the devas. But when the devas used their power, they realized they are less powerful and they are fleeing. If following, out of their selfless desire, they leave them, later these people with bad intentions gain power and again subdue the devas, so following the dharma, it appears like following the dharma it can later cause greater havoc, because these adharmic people gain power and create greater havoc. So I know devas actions themselves appear selfish, but how should one act? Is it better to die just by being selfless, and how should they behave? In a way, actually, you answered, but I wanted to understand this kind of situation, because demon always intend to attack devas, so attack deva and.
So yes, I mean there is always like a natural conflict between the devas and the asuras. Nevertheless, like it says that dharma raksha rakshato, that if you protect the principles of dharma, then dharma will protect you, and if you break the principles of dharma, then dharma will kill you. So maybe from a more like a tactical perspective, it may look expedient that if we let the asuras go today, they'll come back tomorrow and they'll fight with us again. But this is where the shelter of the highest authority is important. That it is recommended, that one should not. All these conditions are given. That if your enemy is intoxicated, like when Arjuna attacked Karna, right? One of the principles is that you should not attack an enemy who is incapacitated in any way. When Krishna asked Arjuna to kill Karna, he says, his chariot wheel is stuck in mud. I can't. And Krishna says, go ahead and kill him. A different thing. But the point is that when the engagement is done on the principles of dharma, that is what gives the ultimate protection. Not so much in terms of today I kill them, tomorrow they might come back and not kill them, right? That is very tactical.
Yeah. So as practicing devotees, we should also follow as much as possible, stick to the principle.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Prabhu. Can I ask second one, Prabhu? Or we are
Well,
out? Yeah, thank you, Prabhu. And while explaining about Vrutrasura, you compared him with Bhishma. Uh, so here Vrutrasura scenario is more straightforward because he is a living demon and his duty is to attack Devas, so he did that. Uh, Bhishma being a Mahapurush, you know, like his actions or words, they can never go futile. But every time at a critical juncture, his life choices seems like he stood in the wrong side of it. Uh, so, uh, but Bhishma being knowing everything, learned from Brosmati and all, he can't make mistakes continuously. He's not Duryodhan. So, what did he do right? Even though externally it appears like all his steps are mistake, because if he is making blunders, Krishna would not have taken him back to Godhead. So I wanted to understand because it's very dicey dharma understanding. So that's why I want to hear.
yeah, yeah. I think discussion on the character of Bhishma, I mentioned it tangentially over here, not with
Sure.
the purpose of opening the whole discussion on Bhishma's morality and character. It's a whole different discussion itself, right? There were some parallels that I saw between
Definitely.
them. That externally they seemed dharmic, but internally they were karmic, right? So that was the parallel that I wanted
Yes,
to.
Prabhu.
Okay, so if there's no more questions, we'll stop over here. वाञ्छकल्पतरुभ्यश्च सिन्धुभ्यैव च पतितनामुपावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। अनंत कोटि वैष्णववृंद की जय। शिला प्रभुपाद की जय। यथाय गौर प्रेमानंद। Thank you so much.